Have you ever wondered how a father could fail to protect his children, despite being a king renowned for his courage and wisdom? This story will make you think about fatherhood and the painful consequences of silence at the most crucial moments. We will go back to the time of King David, who conquered all his enemies, but was unable to protect his children. The death of King David's firstborn son, Amnon, was a result of his silence and failure to deal with family problems. Despite being the king with absolute power, David failed to protect his son. Do you think such a father could make such a serious mistake? And can a father's silence lead to such devastating family tragedies? The story of David, Amnon, and Absalom is not only a lesson in power, but also a warning about the importance of listening, acting, and protecting those you love. David was a man after God's own heart, but he still failed as a father. What do you think? Leave a comment. God, teach me to be a good listening father, to share your thoughts. Imagine a young and virtuous princess walking down the corridors of the royal palace, her footsteps echoing as she approaches her half-brother's room. She carries her kindness and innocence, but little does she know, she is about to experience a nightmare that will change her life forever. And the most shocking part is the dead silence from the one who was supposed to protect her. To understand the magnitude of this family tragedy, we need to look back to Jerusalem, about 1,000 years before Christ. There, at the highest point of the city, stood the royal palace, where King David, the greatest king Israel had ever known, lived. A man who conquered kingdoms, defeated giants, and composed psalms that still touch the hearts of men today. But this is not the story of his triumphs, but of his greatest failure as a father. David built a magnificent empire. His military exploits expanded the borders of Israel as never before. His kingdom prospered, and his name became synonymous with wisdom and justice. Within the palace walls, however, a complex relationship was at work. With multiple wives and concubines, David had a large family with sons and daughters from different mothers, a common practice among kings at the time, but one that inevitably created tensions within the family. Among his children, there was Amnon, the eldest, who succeeded to the throne. There was Absalom, who was renowned for his beauty and charisma. And there was Tamar, a young princess who was about to experience a tragedy that would destroy her life through events that her father could have prevented. What makes this story so relevant to us today is not only the dramatic events it contains, but also the timeless lessons it teaches about family leadership. As we examine the events that led to Tamar's tragedy, we see patterns of behavior and warning signs that modern families still struggle with. How can a leader be so knowledgeable about the affairs of the nation, yet blind to the dangers within his own family? How could a father, known for his sensitivity in writing the Psalms, remain silent in the face of his daughter's pain? And more importantly, what can we learn from these mistakes to protect our own families? Now, we will not only decode the events that led to the breakdown of peace in David's family, but also point out 3 important signs that every father and mother needs to know to avoid similar tragedies. Because while times have changed, the family relationships that can lead to disaster remain the same. This is a story about power, betrayal, and consequences. But above all, it is a cautionary tale about how the silence of those who are meant to protect can become a weapon more destructive than any act of violence. As recorded in 2 Samuel 3, David's path to the throne was marked not only by military exploits, but also by the expansion of his family. At Hebron, he had 6 sons by different women: Amnon by Ahinoam, Kili by Abigail, Absalom by Maacah, Adonijah by Haggith, Shephatiah by Abdul, and Ithream by Eglah. Later in Jerusalem, his family continued to grow. The atmosphere in the royal palace reflects the complexity of this family. Imagine the vast stone corridors where brothers and half-brothers grew up, each carrying not only the burden of being the king's son, but also the expectations and ambitions of their mother. The Bible tells us in 2 Samuel 13 that in the midst of this, Absalom had a sister named Tamar, and Amnon, King David's other son, fell in love with Tamar, Absalom's daughter, before tragedy occurred that changed everything. Life in the palace followed a seemingly normal routine. King David divided his time between the responsibilities of his kingdom and his growing family. The Bible describes him as a man who conquered nearly everything he set his mind to, his kingdom stretching from Dan to Beersheba, 2 Samuel 3 verse 10, a phrase that refers to the entire territory of Israel. However, Behind a curtain of prosperity and power, signs of trouble began to appear. The first signs of this were in the family structure itself. With so many children from different wives, rivalry and jealousy were inevitable. Each prince had his own group of supporters and, of course, his own ambitions. Amnon, as the eldest son, held a special place. The Bible describes him as having special access to the palace and considerable influence. Absalom, on the other hand, displayed the traits that would later make him a rebel: charisma, ambition, and a strong sense of justice. Among the children, Tamar lived under protection, as was customary for young women in the royal family. This is a reminder to us of the importance of maintaining fairness and protecting the vulnerable in the family. Please share your thoughts below this video and leave an amen in the comments if you believe that every family needs protection and justice from the people in it. An important character in this story mentioned in 2 Samuel 13 verse 3 is Jonadab, a nephew of King David and a friend of Amnon. Jonadab is described as a very wise man, and it is he who will provoke a tense situation, turning it into an irreversible tragedy. Presence in the palace and his close relationship with Amnon show how those with ill intentions can exploit vulnerable family structures. What makes the situation all the more tragic is that all the factors that led to disaster were already evident. The children's isolation in their own group, the lack of close supervision from their father, and the presence of questionable advisors, as written in Proverbs 22 verse 3. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. King David, preoccupied with the affairs of the kingdom and perhaps overconfident in the outward harmony of his family, failed to notice that relations within his own family were deteriorating. The same man who was capable of judging the most complex issues of the kingdom seemed to be losing his ability to see the dangerous dynamics right under his own roof. The Bible teaches us in Deuteronomy 6 verses 6 to 7 that parents should carefully instruct their children. Talk about these things when you sit at home, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. But amid the demands of the kingdom and the complexities of family, King David seems to have lost sight of the importance of this basic responsibility. The stage was set for a tragedy that would not only shatter the life of an innocent young girl, but also set off a chain of events that would shake the entire kingdom, and it all started with a lustful glance and a malicious piece of advice. The story took a dark turn when the Bible reveals in 2 Samuel 13 verse 2 that Amnon had become so enamored of his sister, Tamar, that he became physically ill. This is not brotherly love, but a sick obsession that is consuming him. As the king's eldest son, Amnon is used to having his every desire satisfied, but this time the object of his desire is forbidden, his own half-sister. The situation becomes worse when Jonadab appears. In 2 Samuel 13 verse 3, he is described as a very wise man. Seeing his friend looking haggard, he asks, "Why does the king's son look so sad and weary all day long? Won't he tell me?" This seemingly innocent question opens the door to one of the sickest plots recorded in the Bible. And pretending to be sick, Jonadab said, "When your father comes to see you, tell him, 'I want my sister Tamar to come and feed me.'" 2 Samuel 13 verse 5. The plan was simple yet cruel. Taking advantage of the customs of the time, where it was common for women in the family to care for the sick, Jonadab created the perfect trap. He knew that neither David nor Tamar would suspect evil intentions in a seemingly innocent request from his sickly brother. The execution of this plan showed Amnon's depravity. He had no qualms about lying to his father, manipulating his sister, and exploiting family trust. The Bible tells us in 2 Samuel 13 verse 6 that Amnon pretended to be sick to make the plan work. Amnon lay down and pretended to be sick. When the king came to visit, Amnon said, "I want my sister Tamar to come and make some special cakes in front of me so that I can eat from her hand." This request seems natural to David. After all, who would suspect a brother wanting to be cared for by his sister? This is one of the most painful moments in this story, as we see how a father's naivety can inadvertently put his children in danger. In its wisdom, Proverbs 27 verse 12 warns, "The shrewd one sees danger and hides, but the naive go ahead and suffer the consequences." In this case, all the warning signs were ignored. Amnon's sick obsession, Jonadab's questionable advice, and the strange request for special care. Amnon's plan was not simply to satisfy a forbidden desire, but also about power, control, and the distortion of family relationships. He used his position as the eldest son, his father's trust, and his sister's kindness to create a situation where he could carry out his darkest intentions. When Tamar, innocent and obedient, went to her brother's room to be cared for, no one could predict the nightmare that was about to unfold, as recorded in Revelation 7 verse 26. I saw a woman more cruel than death, whose heart was a snare and her hands were chains. Whoever pleases God will escape from her, but whoever commits sin will be taken by her. What happened next is recorded in 2 Samuel 13 with painful clarity. When Tamar arrived at Amnon's chambers, she found her brother, pretending to be ill. With sisterly devotion, she prepared food for him, showing all the care a sister could muster. But then the mask fell. This is a tragic and heartbreaking story, but it is also a powerful reminder of the importance of protecting your loved ones. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share the video, and subscribe to our channel to explore more Bible lessons together. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with us. When she brought him food, he pulled her aside and said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." 2 Samuel 13 verse 11. In this terrifying moment, Tamar realized the trap she had fallen into. Her immediate response demonstrated not only her virtue, but also her understanding of the law and her wisdom in an extremely dangerous situation. "No, brother," she pleaded. "Don't force me. This should not happen in Israel. Don't do this evil thing." 2 Samuel 13 verse 12. She tried to reason with him, appealing to law, morality, and any trace of honesty that might still exist in his heart. She even suggested that he talk to the king in a desperate attempt to buy time or find a way out. But Amnon, obsessed with lust, refused to listen to her, and because he was stronger than she was, he raped her. 2 Samuel 13 verse 14. The brutality of this act is made even clearer by what happened next. The Bible reveals that soon after he had raped her, the love Amnon had thought he had for her turned to hatred. And Amnon hated her with a fierce hatred. Indeed, he hated her more than he had loved her. 2 Samuel 13 verse 15. In a final act of cruelty, Amnon threw her out, adding public humiliation to the violence that had already occurred. Tamar, devastated, tied a mourning veil over her head and tore off the luxurious robe she was wearing. She put her hands on her head and went out, weeping as she went. 2 Samuel 13 verse 19. Her actions of tearing her clothes and covering her head with ashes were a public expression of grief and tragedy in the culture of the time. And here we come to the moment that gives this story its name, David's silence. When the news reached King David, the Bible says that when David heard all this, he was furious, 2 Samuel 13 verse 21. But what followed was even more revealing. Silence. No action, no justice, no protection for his abused daughter. Some scholars suggest that David may have felt paralyzed by his own past sins, remembering his sin with Bathsheba. Others claim he was torn between his roles as king and father. But whatever the reason, the result was disastrous. A daughter ruined, a criminal unpunished, and the seeds of vengeance sown in the heart of Tamar's brother Absalom. David's silence echoes down the centuries as a warning to all parents. When those in positions of power and responsibility choose to fail to act in the face of injustice, especially within their own families, the consequences are severe and far-reaching. Tamar lived alone in the home of her brother Absalom. 2 Samuel 13 verse 20. Her life, once filled with promise and possibility, was reduced to isolation and trauma. The palace, which should have been her refuge, became a place of nightmare, and her father, who should have been her protector, became an accomplice through his silence. This silence not only failed to bring justice to Tamar, but also sowed the seeds of an even greater tragedy, as written in Ecclesiastes 8 verse 11. When the sentence for a crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. Silence has a price, and in David's family, that price is recouped with interest. 2 Samuel 13 verse 22 tells us that Absalom said nothing to Amnon, neither good nor bad, but only hatred for his humiliation of his sister, Tamar. This silence, unlike David's passive silence, was calculated, a silence that foreshadowed the storm. For 2 years, Absalom nurtured his hatred, nurturing it day by day. The Bible shows how he meticulously planned his revenge, waiting for the perfect moment. The biblical text emphasizes that 2 years later, 2 Samuel 13, verse 23, Absalom finally carried out his plan. Absalom's plan was just as cunning as Amnon's, but with a different purpose. He organized a sheep-shearing festival, a traditional event usually celebrated with a large feast, as recorded in 2 Samuel 13, verse 24. He invited all the king's sons, including David, even though he knew the king would probably not attend. When David hesitated to allow Amnon to attend the feast, Absalom insisted that his eldest brother be present. If not, please let my brother Amnon come with us, 2 Samuel 13, verse 26. This request seemed innocent at first, but it carried a death sentence. During the feast, when Amnon was drunk with wine, 2 Samuel 13, verse 28, Absalom signaled to his servants. The command was clear. When Amnon is drunk, I will say to you, slay Amnon, and then kill him. The moment of vengeance came, and the execution was carried out quickly and brutally. The king's other sons, fearing for their lives, hastily fled on donkeys, 2 Samuel 13, verse 29. The news that reached King David was even worse than it turned out to be. Absalom had killed all the king's sons. He had left not one of them alive, 2 Samuel 13, verse 30. When this bad news spread, it shook the entire royal family. The rumor spread quickly, causing panic among everyone. But, as we will see, these rumors were not always accurate. In fact, only Amnon, David's firstborn son, was dead. But the spread of news made King David and everyone in the royal palace think that all the princes had been killed. Jonadab, who had previously encouraged Amnon to carry out his cruel plan against Tamar, now appeared in this situation. Instead of reacting with remorse, Jonadab quickly reassured King David, "My lord, do not think that they have killed all the king's sons. Only Amnon is dead," 2 Samuel 13, verse 32. However, Jonadab's words could not ease King David's grief, because Amnon's death was a great shock to him anyway. In fact, even though the news of all the princes' deaths was false, the sadness and confusion it brought still left David feeling utterly drained and broken. King David's reaction to Amnon's death reveals a father torn between his love for his children and the consequences of his own previous silence. David was not only devastated by Amnon's death, but also felt powerless to protect his son, partly because of his own silence about the previous events that had occurred in his family, particularly when he realized that he had not acted in time to prevent the tragedies from happening. The guilt and remorse must have broken David's heart. Amnon's death was not only a loss to his family, but also a price to pay for his own shortcomings as a leader. A father, no matter how powerful his reign, must face powerful emotional storms when faced with loss and his inability to protect his children. David, known for his courage and wisdom in making important decisions for the kingdom, became weak and hurt when faced with the mistakes of his family. He failed to see the dangers from the warning signs in his family, and his silence about Amnon's wrongdoing set in motion a devastating chain of events that he could not control. Furthermore, Amnon's death was also a reflection of David's own loss of control within his family. His son's death was not only a personal loss, but also a profound disruption of the family structure. David's failure to protect his son also reflected his failure to maintain a strong family environment where members could find safety and protection in times of crisis. King David's grief did not end with Amnon's death. He also faced a broken family, a line torn apart by violence and silence. Although David was a powerful king, he failed to fulfill his role as a father in his family. The actions of Amnon and Absalom were not only the result of personal desires, but also the consequence of a family environment that lacked supervision, communication, and solid leadership. David's reaction to Amnon's death also revealed the spiritual crisis he was facing. He could not understand why his silence led to his son's death. Amnon's death was not only a tragic event, but also a reminder of the importance of taking action when faced with signs of danger in the family. David did not act promptly to stop Amnon's crimes, nor did he have a plan to protect his children from future dangers. Amnon's death was a tragedy, but it was also an inevitable tragedy when a father fails to see the evil lurking in his family. When David realized that his silence had led to Amnon's death, He was not only left with personal pain, but also faced with the responsibility of a father who had failed to protect his children. The king stood up, tore his robes, and lay down on the ground. 2 Samuel 13, verse 31. But the cycle of violence and silence was not over. Absalom fled to Geshur, where he remained for 3 years. During this time, as we read in 2 Samuel 13, verse 39, King David longed to go to Absalom because he had been comforted by Amnon's death. A father's heart, even in the face of tragedy and the murder of his brother, still longs for his son. This series of events shows us how violence begets violence and how silence in the face of injustice can lead to even more devastating consequences. As Galatians 6 verse 7 says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." The cost of David's initial silence after the rape of Tamar had now begun to compound. A daughter ruined, a son murdered, another son in exile, and a royal family destroyed. Yet the damage continued. To understand the impact of this family tragedy, we need to analyze the crucial leadership mistakes David made as a father. For the same man who showed extraordinary courage against Goliath and great wisdom in governing Israel, David failed at the most crucial moment when his family needed him the most. The first fundamental mistake was a lack of vigilance. As an experienced leader, David should have recognized the warning signs. In 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, we learn that God does not see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. Ironically, David, a man chosen for his ability to see beyond appearances, failed to recognize evil intentions in his own family. The second mistake is paralysis in the face of crisis. When evil befell Tamar, the Bible tells us that David was angry, but he did not act. This inaction becomes even more important when we consider that as king, he had all the power necessary to execute justice. Proverbs 21 verse 15 says, "When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but it is terror to the wicked." David failed as both a father and a competent leader. His third mistake, perhaps the most devastating, was letting his past ruin his present. Some scholars suggest that David may have felt unqualified to punish Amnon for his own sin with Bathsheba. In 2 Samuel 12, verse 10, the prophet Nathan predicted that the sword shall never depart from your house as a result of his actions. However, this prophecy was not a reason for inaction, but rather a warning that should have made him more careful in his role as head of his family. David demonstrated a dangerous tendency to avoid necessary conflict. In 1 Kings 1, verse 6, speaking of one of his sons, Adonijah, the Bible says that his father never rebuked him by asking, "Why have you acted thus?" This pattern of not confronting evil in the family led to dire consequences. David's passive leadership created a power vacuum that violence and vengeance filled. As Revelation 8 verse 11 warns, when judgment is not executed speedily, the heart of man is filled with evil plans. David's silence in the face of Amnon's crimes allowed Absalom to take matters into his own hands, rather than relying on the king's power. The subtle but equally important mistake David made was his failure to create an environment of open and safe communication within his family. The absence of a solid foundation for family members to communicate, share, and protect each other created a dangerous vacuum where unhealthy relationships and destructive behavior could thrive unchecked. When Tamar was attacked, she did not find safety and protection in her father to seek justice. This was a serious failure on the part of David, a father who should have been the protector of his children, the first person to stand up to protect them from any danger, especially in situations like this. But no conversation took place between David and Tamar, no safe space for her to express her grief and seek help from her father. Instead, she was left in pain and shame. Furthermore, when Absalom plotted revenge for Tamar, no dialogue could have prevented further violence. David's silence throughout this process laid the groundwork for Absalom's revenge. There was no clear communication within the family, no system or mechanism for family members to exchange ideas, resolve conflicts, or recognize problems before they became too serious. Absalom, with his hatred and resentment building up, acted out of spite without any correction or dialogue from his father. As it is written in Proverbs 29, verse 15, "A rod and a reprimand impart wisdom, but a child left undisciplined disgraces its mother. This quote reflects a profound truth about the role of discipline in shaping character and values in a family. The lack of loving and consistent discipline in David's family created an environment where his children felt free to pursue their own destructive actions. The lack of proper guidance and management led to each family member acting on their own emotions without considering the consequences of those actions. David was a powerful father, but that power was not used effectively in maintaining order and safety in the family. He failed to assert his leadership role in a family where conflicts need to be resolved through dialogue, understanding, and timely intervention. Meanwhile, when problems began to erupt in the family, David failed to respond promptly. He failed to create an environment where his children could feel comfortable opening up and sharing their problems without fear of being ignored or judged. When we look back at the story of David and his family, we can see a lack of basic principles of family leadership. A father, no matter how powerful, cannot be a good father without the ability to listen and participate in the lives of his children. The family is not just a place to build wealth or reputation, but a place where members learn, grow, and support each other in all situations. Without an open and safe space of communication, where each family member feels heard and respected, problems will become more serious, leading to irreversible tragedies. The lack of communication in David's family is not only a failure to deal with problems, but also reflects a profound lack of understanding of the role of family leadership. When a father fails to communicate effectively with his children, or fails to create a space for them to express their thoughts and feelings, the family is at great risk. David did not create a solid foundation for trust among family members. When Tamar faced tragedy, she could not seek protection from her father. When Absalom sought revenge, no one in David's family could stop the violence. The lack of communication and discipline in David's family also undermined the ability to resolve conflicts wisely and peacefully. Instead of using reason and love to solve problems, his children chose the path of violence and revenge. This was not only a mistake in David's family, but also a valuable lesson for all of us. Family is the first place where each of us learns how to deal with conflicts and difficulties in life. A family environment that lacks communication can have serious consequences, and sometimes these mistakes can be passed on to the next generation. It is important that we create family environments where everyone feels safe to share their thoughts and feelings. A family is not only a place of love, but also a place to learn and grow. If a parent cannot communicate effectively with their children, or cannot provide support when needed, then that family cannot thrive and be strong. The story of David and his family is a reminder to all of us of the importance of communication in the family and the role of loving discipline in building a happy and secure family. The first important lesson is the importance of active vigilance, as warned in 1 Peter 5, verse 8. We must be alert and discerning. In today's world, where children and young people are exposed to unseen dangers through social media and digital relationships, this vigilance becomes even more important. This is not fanatical control, but a genuinely attentive and involved presence in the lives of children. The warning signs that David missed have modern equivalents: sudden changes in behavior, unusual isolation, strained or inconsistent family relationships, the presence of mentors with questionable influence. The second fundamental lesson is the need for immediate action in abusive situations. David's silence after Tamar's abuse teaches us that inaction in the face of evil is a form of complicity, as written in James 4, verse 17. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. Today, this means creating open lines of communication within the family, setting clear and consistent boundaries, acting promptly when abuse is suspected, and seeking professional help when necessary. The third lesson addresses the importance of breaking the cycle of violence. David's family tragedy developed in an escalating spiral, from inappropriate lust to sexual violence, from silence to deadly revenge. In Galatians 6 verses 7 to 8, we are reminded that each person will reap what he sows. For modern families, this means identifying and addressing toxic relationship patterns, seeking peaceful conflict resolution, promoting forgiveness without foregoing justice, and creating safe environments for emotional expression. The fourth lesson is about the need for proactive and present leadership. Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, "Train up your children in the way they should go. This instruction requires presence, involvement, and consistent modeling. In today's reality, this means being actively involved in your children's lives, demonstrating values through actions rather than just words, creating frequent family bonding moments, and being available in times of crisis. Finally, we learn the importance of breaking the silence. Fear, shame, or the desire to maintain appearances cannot be stronger than the need to protect the vulnerable. As it says in Ephesians 5, verse 11, "Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but expose them." For families today, this means creating an environment where difficult truths can be told, establishing support and protection networks, not hesitating to seek outside help when needed, and prioritizing the safety and well-being of vulnerable people over appearances. These lessons are not simple suggestions, but vital principles for family health. As we saw in Tamar's story, the cost of silence and neglect can be catastrophic, and the consequences can reverberate across generations. So how can we turn these lessons into concrete actions to protect and strengthen our families? Here are some practical, immediate steps you can take. First, establish regular moments of family dialogue. Don't wait until a problem arises to create space for communication. Follow the advice of Deuteronomy 6, verse 7, and talk about these issues when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you rise. Develop a family safety plan. This includes knowing your children's friends and social networks, setting clear rules about internet and social media use, creating secure passwords for dangerous situations, and keeping emergency contact information up to date. Third, seek preventative professional help. Just as we see our doctors for regular checkups, a family counselor or therapist can help identify and address issues before they become crises. Fourth, strengthen family bonds through regular family meals, shared activities, moments of prayer or reflection, and celebrations of family accomplishments and milestones. It is time for us to speak up, act, and protect, because sometimes breaking the silence is a first step to restoring peace. The story of King David, Amnon, and Absalom is not only a family tragedy, but also a powerful reminder to us of the importance of listening and acting at the right time in our lives. Although David was a brave king, as a father he failed to protect those he loved. The mistakes of silence and lack of communication led to irreparable loss. Let us ask ourselves, what can we learn from these failures? Can we create a family environment where everyone feels safe to share, listen, and protect each other? The lesson of this story is a reminder that silence in the face of evil is not a wise choice. When we do not act, the consequences will come and can be devastating. If you find this story helpful, don't forget to like and share this video so others can learn too. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos about valuable lessons from the Bible. What about you? What will you do to protect your family and prevent unfortunate mistakes? Share your thoughts below this video. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes silence is what needs to be broken to restore peace. See you in the next videos.
Have you ever wondered what makes a true hero of faith? What if I told you that hidden within the pages of the Bible, there is a mighty warrior so powerful that even lions trembled at the sound of his name? What would you think? This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of Benaniah, one of David's mighty warriors, and the secret behind his extraordinary strength. You may have heard of David and Goliath, but Benaniah, this unsung hero, is the one whose feats will leave you breathless. Imagine facing a lion in a pit on a snowy day, or battling a giant Egyptian with only a club. Sounds unbelievable, right? But Benaniah did it, and so much more. However, here's the special part. Benaniah's true strength was not in his muscles or combat skills. No, there's something deeper, a secret that most people overlook when reading his story. A secret that turned an ordinary man into one of the most feared warriors in biblical history. In the next few minutes, we will uncover this mystery. We'll dive into Benaniah's amazing feats, his steadfast loyalty, and most importantly, the source of his hidden strength, which you can apply to your own life today. So, are you ready to discover the secret that made Benaniah unbeatable? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any exciting updates from us. First, we need to know that Benaniah was not just a warrior, he was also one of the most trusted and courageous leaders under King David's reign. With his bravery and miraculous feats, Benaiah played a crucial role in David's kingdom and continued to be a key figure in Solomon's reign. Understanding Benaiah in the Bible reveals a powerful story of courage, loyalty, and divine purpose. Benaiah was the son of Jehoiada, a renowned priest, and a member of the tribe of Levi. He came from Kabzeel, a town in southern Judah. His lineage and upbringing surely had a significant impact on his character, instilling in Benaiah the strong qualities and leadership abilities he would later display, becoming one of David's mighty warriors. Although Benaiah's childhood is not detailed in the Bible, his actions and feats under King David's reign demonstrate his valuable qualities. As a member of the elite group known as David's Mighty Men, Benaiah not only proved himself to be an excellent warrior, but also a leader among warriors. He inspired those around him through his unwavering courage and loyalty to the king. Benaiah crafted his own story, transforming himself into a legend. He was not just a brave fighter, he was a model of loyalty and unshakable courage. Benaiah's combat prowess is vividly portrayed in several Bible passages, particularly in 2 Samuel 23 verse 20, where it is recorded that he defeated two of Moab's finest warriors and faced a lion in a snow-filled pit. Imagine a soldier fighting not just one, but two of Moab's elite warriors, men who had been trained their whole lives and were adversaries to be reckoned with. Each of these feats not only demonstrates his physical strength, but also his extraordinary bravery in facing monumental challenges. This was no mere luck, it was skill, courage, and something more. We need to understand that in ancient Israel, the Moabites were frequently at odds with the Israelites, and Benaiah's confrontation with the two Moabite warriors clearly showcased his courage. This event is recorded as him defeating them, proving his skill and unwavering determination. This action solidified his reputation as a formidable warrior, always ready to face powerful enemies without ever wavering in his mission to protect the king and the people. But Benaiah was just getting started. Another impressive story about Benaiah is when he confronted a lion in a pit on a snowy day. On a cold, snowy day, in such a dangerous circumstance, he had to face one of nature's most fearsome predators, a lion. Let's dive deeper into the story of the lion, which could be considered one of the greatest challenges Benaiah faced. This scene was not just an ordinary battle. He had to face a lion, one of nature's most infamous and dangerous predators, and at that time, not everyone could survive an encounter. Lions are powerful, agile, and incredibly dangerous. Even in perfect conditions, facing a lion could be a death sentence for most people. But Benaiah didn't face this lion on flat ground. No, he was in a pit with the lion. The Bible doesn't give us all the details, but just imagine the scene. The narrow walls of the pit, the slippery snow-covered ground, the lion's hot breath visible in the cold air, the tension thick in the atmosphere. One mistake, and everything would be over. But here's what is truly astonishing. Benaiah didn't run, he wasn't afraid, and he didn't hesitate. Instead, he attacked and took down the lion. This encounter reveals so much about Benaiah's character. It shows his courage, certainly, but more than that, it demonstrates his ability to think quickly, stay calm under pressure, and be willing to face risks that were too great. What's remarkable here is not just his strength, but also his strategic thinking. In snowy conditions, the area became dangerous, but Benaiah was not afraid or hesitant. Facing a lion in such conditions was no small feat, and this story helped make Benaiah a legendary figure for his courage and resourcefulness. And this is also a spiritual lesson. In 1 Peter 5:8, we are warned that our enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Benaiah's encounter with the lion is truly a powerful metaphor for the spiritual battles we face. Many scholars also interpret this story as a metaphor for confronting fear and challenges head-on, regardless of the circumstances. This is something we must reflect on, because in such conditions, it would be difficult for us to stand firm, let alone face a fierce predator like that. But Benaiah, he saw it as a challenge and did not back down. But the important question is, what gave Benaiah the courage to face this lion? what was the source of his strength and fearlessness? As we continue to explore Benaiah's story, keep this great feat in mind, because it's not just about physical ability. The challenges Benaiah faced and overcame are truly remarkable, and what makes us reflect even more is how he brought down those seemingly invincible opponents. This further strengthens our belief that we can do all things through Jesus Christ, who gives us strength. If you believe that too, be sure to subscribe to the channel and continue watching the video to discover more amazing things. Benaiah's story is also the key to understanding the secret that made him extraordinary. If you think facing a lion in a pit was impressive enough, wait until you hear about Benaiah's encounter with the Egyptian giant. This encounter is like a version 2.0 of David and Goliath, but with a twist that will leave you in awe. Imagine this: Benaiah facing an Egyptian warrior, but not just any warrior. The Bible describes him as a man of great stature. This is a giant we're talking about. And he's armed with a spear that the Bible says was like a weaver's beam. But Benaiah carried only a club. Imagine this: he brought a club to fight a giant armed with a spear, and by some miracle, Benaiah took the spear from the Egyptian's hand and used it to strike him down with his own weapon. These feats were not only impressive, but almost superhuman. But Benaiah was no superhero. He was just a man, one of David's mighty warriors, facing an Egyptian warrior who wasn't just large, but gigantic. This was a classic case of the weaker facing the stronger. But what's intriguing is this: Benaiah didn't have a sword, he didn't have a spear. All he had was a club. Imagine taking a club into battle against a giant. Most of us would look at this situation and think that it's impossible, that it can't be done. But not Benaiah. He saw this giant with circumstances that seemed nearly impossible, and he did not back down. Instead, he charged forward, taking action that seemed to disregard reason and military strategy. Benaiah charged straight at the Egyptian. He didn't dodge the spear or try to defend himself. Instead, he rushed right at the Egyptian's weapon with skill and courage that's hard to imagine. Benaiah seized the spear from the giant's hand, and then, in a twist no one expected, he used the Egyptian's own weapon to strike him down. This was truly a reversal of fortunes. This confrontation wasn't just about physical strength or combat skills. It was about faith, courage, and the ability to see beyond what seemed impossible. Benaiah didn't just overcome a physical giant that day. He defeated the monster of fear and impossibility. This is a powerful lesson for all of us. We often face our own giants, problems that seem insurmountable, challenges that are too great to handle. Benaiah's story reminds us that with the right mindset and the right source of strength, even the greatest giants can fall. But the question remains: what gave Benaiah this extraordinary courage? What was the secret that enabled him to face seemingly impossible challenges without flinching? As we continue to explore Benaiah's story, keep these feats in mind, because they are not just stories of courage. They are clues that help us understand the secret that made Benaiah one of the most fearsome warriors in biblical history. Let's continue to explore Benaiah's story and recall this confrontation, as it's an important part of understanding what made Benaiah extraordinary. We've talked about Benaiah's remarkable feats, but there's another aspect of his character that's equally impressive: his steadfast loyalty to King David. This loyalty wasn't just about following orders, it was about standing firm in the face of political turmoil and personal danger. Let me give you some context. King David's reign was not always peaceful. There were power struggles, rebellions, and moments when even David's life was at risk. Yet through it all, Benaiah stood by King David, one of his most trusted allies. Indeed, we can say that Benaiah was behind serving God through serving King David and King Solomon, and his mighty deeds honored God's name. Therefore, trust in the Lord, and you will be saved. If you believe this too, leave an amen in the comments below. In 1 Kings, we see a prime example of Benaiah's loyalty when it was tested. King David was old and bedridden, and his son Adonijah decided to claim the throne. This wasn't just a family matter, it was a full-blown coup. Many people, including some of David's longtime advisors, sided with Adonijah, except for Benaiah. When David declared that Solomon would be his successor, Benaniah did not hesitate. He stood by David's choice, even though it meant going against powerful figures and possibly risking his own life. In 1 Kings 1:36-37, Benaniah son of Jehoiada answered the king, "Amen. May the Lord, the God of my lord the king, so declare it. As the Lord was with my lord the king, so may he be with Solomon to make his throne even greater than the throne of my lord King David." These were not just empty words. Benaniah proved his words with actions. He played a key role in ensuring Solomon's ascension to the throne, protecting Solomon from those who sought to disrupt God's plan for the kingdom. But Benaiah's loyalty didn't just stop at political scheme. He was also one of the mighty warriors who stood by David during the darkest hours of his life. Benaniah was always by his side during crucial times, including the troubles with Absalom, David's son who rebelled against the king. After avenging his sister, Absalom fled to Geshur, where he was exiled for 3 years. This period caused the house of David much pain and turmoil. David mourned the death of Amnon and felt the absence of Absalom, but his heart was torn between fatherly love and the duty of justice. Joab, the commander of David's army, noticed the king's distress and devised a plan to bring Absalom back to Jerusalem. With the help of a wise woman from Tekoa, Joab convinced David to allow Absalom's return. However, even though he returned to Jerusalem, Absalom was not allowed to meet David for 2 years, which only fueled his resentment and ambition. Absalom was dissatisfied with his position and desired power. He began to win the favor of the people of Israel. Gradually, Absalom gathered enough support to stage a rebellion. He went to Hebron, declared himself king, and began a revolt against his father. The news of Absalom's rebellion reached David, and he became greatly concerned for the safety of Jerusalem, deciding to leave the city with those loyal to him. David's escape was a moment of great humiliation and sorrow. He crossed the Kidron Valley and climbed the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. During this time, David encountered Shimei, a member of Saul's family, who cursed him and threw stones at him. David accepted the insults, believing that perhaps God was using Shimei to rebuke him. While David took refuge in Mahanaim, Absalom seized Jerusalem and entered the royal palace. However, Absalom's rebellion did not last long. David's forces, under the command of Joab, confronted Absalom's army in the forest of Ephraim. As Absalom tried to flee, his hair got caught in the branches of a tree, making him an easy target. Although David had commanded that his son's life be spared, Joab did not obey and took Absalom's life. The news of Absalom's death was a great shock to David. He mourned deeply, expressing his wish that he could have died in place of his son. "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died instead of you." When David had to flee from his son Absalom, Benaniah was there. When David was hiding in the wilderness, Benaniah was also there. Such unwavering, unshakable loyalty, ready to face danger, is rare. It reflects a deep faith, a belief in something greater than oneself. Benaiah's loyalty was not only to David, the man, but to the mission and the anointing that God had placed on his life. His loyalty wasn't just in words, it was also shown through his actions in protecting the king and helping restore order to the land. Even in the face of the risk of losing his position, Benaiah's devotion was a testament to his integrity and honor. His actions during this difficult time demonstrated that loyalty is not just about words, but requires action and sacrifice. This is a powerful lesson for us in a world where loyalty seems to be increasingly rare. Benaiah's example challenges us to stand firm in our commitments, especially when it comes to pursuing God's plan. But the question we must ask ourselves is, what is the source of this unshakable loyalty? What gave Benaiah the strength to stand firm when others began to waver? As we continue to explore the secret behind Benaiah's extraordinary life, let's keep this aspect of his character in mind, as it is another important part of the big picture. We've walked through Benaiah's remarkable feats together, facing lions, giants, and political turmoil. But now, it's time to unveil the true source of his strength. Are you ready? The secret behind Benaiah's courage was his unwavering faith in God. You see, Benaniah was not just a skilled warrior or a loyal follower. He was a man who understood that his strength came from something, or rather, someone, much greater than himself. This wasn't just an empty theory, it was a deep faith that shaped every aspect of his life. Look at this evidence. In 2 Samuel 23:20, we are told that Benaniah was the son of Jehoiada, a brave man from Kabzeel. Interestingly, the word Kabzeel in Hebrew means God gathers. From the very beginning, Benaiah's life was linked with the presence and purpose of God. Therefore, every time he heard his name, Benaniah didn't just remember his family, he remembered the Creator who had chosen him as an instrument to accomplish great things. You might wonder, why is there such a strong connection between his name and the work he did? But this story goes even deeper. The name Benaniah itself means Yahweh has built, or Yahweh has established. In other words, he didn't create his own strength. It was God who built and established him, equipping him with the ability to overcome any challenge. Imagine this, if you were Benaniah, and every time you heard your name, you realized that the Creator of the universe had chosen you, had built you to do miraculous things. Could you feel the strength rising in your heart? Every time Benaniah heard his name, it was a reminder of God's strength and faithfulness. Let's look at some of Benaiah's extraordinary actions. On one occasion, he faced a lion in a snow-filled pit. Can you imagine facing a lion or a giant, knowing that your very identity is built upon the Creator of the universe? This kind of faith isn't passive, it's a living trust, a strong belief that helped Benaniah do the seemingly impossible. When he faced the lion in the pit, he didn't rely on his own strength. He stepped out in faith, believing that the one who created that lion was with him. When he faced the Egyptian giant with only a club, he wasn't being foolish. He was demonstrating a deep understanding of God, as seen in Psalm 18:29. With your help, I can advance against a troop. With my God, I can scale a wall. With that trust, Benaniah faced great challenges and not only defeated the lion, but also triumphed over giants. He faced the Egyptian giant with only a club, a small warrior full of faith in God's help. Remember, faith in God isn't passive, it's a living trust, enabling him to act with courage and confidence. Benaniah was not only a brave warrior, but also a loyal servant to King David. This loyalty wasn't just political support, but a recognition of the anointed one of God. King David was chosen by God to be the king of Israel, and Benaniah, with his deep faith in God's plan, displayed absolute loyalty. He was loyal not only to David, but also to his Creator. Have you ever wondered what we can do when faced with challenges in life? We may not face literal lions or giants, but all of us have our own battles and challenges. Benaiah's secret reminds us that true courage doesn't come from our own abilities or resources, but from a deep, unwavering faith in God. Ephesians 6 verse 10 says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power." Do you believe that God's strength will help you overcome challenges? Can you feel His presence with you in every step you take? I'd like to invite you to reflect for a moment. Imagine you're facing a big issue in your life. You feel fearful and unsure of what to do. Can you rely on God's strength like Benaniah did? Share your thoughts with me. Can you feel the comfort and strength that come from God in your own difficult moments? And don't forget, just like Benaniah, we can believe that God is always with us. He is the one who has built and established us, and when we place our trust in Him, He will be the strength that helps us overcome every challenge. This is the secret of Benaniah, and it can also be our secret. When we place our strong trust in God, when we believe in His power rather than in our own strength, we can face any challenge with courage and confidence. Benaiah's loyalty wasn't only shown in his loyalty to King David, he was also a key figure in King Solomon's reign. After King David passed away, Benaiah played a vital role in supporting Solomon as he ascended the throne. Adonijah, another son of David, tried to claim the throne, putting the kingdom in a dangerous position. Benaiah's steadfastness and strategic mind were clearly displayed during this transition period. Recognizing the importance of Solomon becoming king, Benaiah, together with the prophet Nathan, ensured that Solomon was anointed as king. His decisive actions showed that his loyalty wasn't just to King David, but also to protecting the future of the kingdom. Benaiah's support helped solidify Solomon's position on the throne, bringing peace and order to Israel after a time of turmoil. Benaiah's loyalty and wisdom were further recognized when Solomon appointed him as commander of the army. This was not only a testament to his leadership abilities, but also highlighted the importance of having loyal, capable people in key positions, especially in the military. Speaking of King Solomon, we know that this king is renowned in the Bible for his wisdom, wealth, and prosperity. He ascended the throne around 967 BC. His kingdom at that time stretched from the Euphrates River in the north in Mesopotamia down to northern Egypt in the south. There is an interesting story between King Solomon and Benaiah. One day, King Solomon unexpectedly wanted to tease Benaiah, one of his most trusted servants. He said, "Benaiah, I want you to bring me a special ring to wear during the Sukkot festival, and I'll give you 6 months to find it." Benaiah responded, "If anything exists in this world, Your Majesty, I will find it and bring it back to you, but surely this ring must have something very special about it." King Solomon replied, "This ring has magical power. If anyone who is happy looks at it, they will feel sad, and if anyone who is sad looks at it, they will feel happy." King Solomon knew that no such ring would exist, but he wanted to give his servant a little lesson, causing him some embarrassment. Spring passed, summer came, but Benaiah still could not find such a ring. On the night before the Sukkot festival, he decided to visit one of the poorest neighborhoods in Jerusalem. As he walked through, he saw a street vendor displaying items on an old tarp. Benaiah stopped and asked, "Have you ever heard of a magical ring that makes a happy person forget their joy and a sad person forget their sorrow?" The vendor pulled out a simple ring from under the tarp, engraved with a line of text. When Benaiah read the inscription on the ring, a broad smile appeared on his face. That night, the entire city rejoiced, celebrating the Sukkot festival. "Well, my friend," King Solomon said, "have you found the ring as I requested?" All the servants laughed, and even King Solomon chuckled. To everyone's surprise, Benaiah pulled out the ring and said, "Here, Your Majesty." When King Solomon read the inscription on the ring, the smile on his face instantly vanished. The ring was engraved with the words, "This too shall pass." In that moment, King Solomon realized that all his wisdom, power, and kingship were fleeting, for one day he too would be nothing but dust. Benaiah teaches us about courage in the face of danger. His confrontations with powerful enemies, including the lion, serve as reminders that we too may face challenging situations in life. Rather than avoiding them, Benaiah's example encourages us to confront our fears with strength and determination. Benaiah's unwavering loyalty to both King David and later Solomon is a valuable lesson in integrity. In a world where loyalty can sometimes waver, Benaiah stands as a model of how to maintain steadfast commitment to those we serve and support. Benaiah's journey from warrior to leader emphasizes the importance of purpose in leadership. His life shows how leaders should inspire those around them and act with responsibility and duty. Whether in spiritual or secular contexts, strong leadership stems from wisdom, strength, and an unwavering commitment to one's goals. Benaiah's story is not just about an ancient warrior. It is a powerful reminder for us today that with God, nothing is impossible. His secret has been revealed, and it is a secret that can transform our lives. Benaiah's story is not just an interesting tale from ancient times, but a treasure of wisdom that we can apply to our lives today. So, what can we learn from this mighty warrior of faith? First and foremost, Benaiah teaches us about the strength of courage built on faith. He didn't rush into danger recklessly. His courage was grounded in his deep faith in God. This reminds us that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of fear, knowing that God is always with us. Next, Benaiah's life shows the importance of seizing opportunities when faced with seemingly insurmountable situations. Whether facing a lion in a pit or a giant warrior, Benaiah didn't hesitate. He saw these as opportunities to demonstrate God's power. How many times have we missed great opportunities simply because we were too afraid to step out. Loyalty is another key lesson from Benaniah's life. In a world where alliances often shift with the winds, Benaniah's unwavering loyalty to King David is truly admirable. It challenges us to stand firm in our commitments, especially when it comes to pursuing God's plan for our lives. Benaniah also teaches us about the strength of human nature. His very name is a testament to God's faithfulness. This reminds us to build our character on what God says about us, not on our circumstances or the opinions of others. This also teaches us about preparation. Benaniah didn't become a mighty warrior overnight. His feats suggest that he went through years of training and discipline. This encourages us to be diligent in developing our skills and strengthening our faith, so we are ready when challenges arise. Ultimately, Benaniah's life is a powerful illustration of how God can use ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. Benaniah wasn't a superhero. He was a man who allowed God to work through him in amazing ways. This gives us hope that God can use us as well, despite the limitations we often place on ourselves. The lessons from Benaniah's life are not just ancient wisdom, but practical truths we can apply today, whether we're facing lions, giants, or seemingly insurmountable situations. Benaniah's example encourages us to step out in faith, trusting in God, the one who makes all things possible. As we conclude our journey exploring Benaniah's extraordinary life, it's time to ask ourselves, how can we apply his secret in our own lives today? Benaniah's story is not just an ancient hero's tale. It's an eternal blueprint for a life filled with courage, faith, and purpose. The secret that made Benaniah invincible, his unwavering faith in God, remains strong and applicable to us, just as it was for him thousands of years ago. In our modern world, we may not face lions in pits or giant warriors with spears, but we all have our own challenges that sometimes feel overwhelming. It might be a difficult situation at work, a relationship in turmoil, or a personal struggle that seems insurmountable. Benaniah's example reminds us that with God, we can face the lions and giants in our own lives. Think for a moment, what would change in your life if you faced challenges with the courage of Benaniah? How would your perspective change if you truly believe that the God of the universe is with you? Benaniah's secret calls us to step out of our comfort zones and into a life of faith and adventure. It encourages us to see opportunities where others only see obstacles, to stand firm in our beliefs when it would be easier to waver. But remember, this is not about calling on your own strength or courage. It's about tapping into a power far greater than yourself. It's about letting God work through you, just as he did with Benaniah. So, as we conclude, I encourage you to choose one area of your life where you need the courage of Benaniah. Perhaps it's a relationship that needs healing, a dream you've been too afraid to pursue, or a truth you need to stand up for. Together, we've explored the incredible story of Benaniah, the strong, brave, and loyal warrior who not only faced extraordinary challenges but also carried within him a profound secret that made him extraordinary. From his feats with the lion in the snow-filled pit to his battle with the Egyptian giant, every moment of Benaniah's life reflects a steadfast faith in God and an unwavering loyalty to King David. His story is not just an ancient tale, but a powerful lesson for us today. When we trust in God's strength, no challenge is too great and no enemy is too strong. What have you learned from this warrior? Do the challenges in your life seem insurmountable? But like Benaniah, can you find strength and confidence when you rely on faith and trust in God? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring inspiring stories from the Bible. Together, we will uncover the secrets of faith and strength that God grants to the faithful. See you in the next video.
Welcome to the Bible Hub Bible Stories channel, where we bring you inspiring and meaningful Bible stories. We are proud to introduce the talented screenwriter of our channel, a passionate young woman with a deep love for the Bible. She doesn't just write profound stories, but also helps viewers gain a deeper understanding of God's faith and love through each script. Writing scripts is not only her passion, but also her mission. which brings each video to life with energy and inspiration. We would also like to introduce the channel owner, the heart and soul of our channel. He constantly gives us all, overcoming any challenge to deliver the highest quality videos and convey a powerful message to everyone. We hope you'll continue to join us on our journey with Bible Hub, Bible stories, as we explore and spread the message of God. Thank you for your love and support.